Amber Patterson clutched her basket of medicinal herbs to her chest as she hurried along the dusty main street of La Junta, Colorado, painfully aware of the whispers that followed her like persistent shadows. It was 1875, and the frontier town had grown suspicious of the 23-year-old woman who could ease a fever with elderberry tonic or mend a broken heart with hawthorn tea when the doctor's remedies failed. "There she goes again," someone murmured loudly enough for her to hear. Gathering her witch's brew ingredients, Amber quickened her pace, her worn boots kicking up small clouds of dust. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the street as she made her way toward her small cabin at the edge of town. Her father had built it before the influenza took both her parents 3 years ago, leaving her alone with nothing but their knowledge of healing plants and a community growing increasingly distrustful of her methods. "Miss Patterson," a small voice called out. Amber turned to see young Emma Miller running toward her, the little girl's blonde braids bouncing with each step. Emma's mother stood on the porch of the general store, her expression a mixture of worry and disapproval. "Emma, your mother doesn't want you talking to me," Amber said gently, kneeling to meet the child's eager eyes. "But I wanted to thank you," Emma whispered. "The tea you gave Pa made his cough stop." Amber smiled, her heart warming despite the coldness of the town. "I'm glad he's feeling better. Now go on back to your mother before she worries." As Emma skipped away, Amber felt the stares of townsfolk intensify. She stood tall and continued her walk home, refusing to be cowed by their ignorance. Inside her cabin, she arranged her fresh gathered herbs on the drying rack and lit a small fire in the hearth. The familiar scent of dried rosemary and sage hanging from the rafters comforted her. A loud knocking at her door startled her. Visitors were rare and rarely friendly. Amber approached cautiously, her hand lingering on the small knife she kept in her apron pocket. "Who's there?" she called. "Owen O'Malley, madam. I've got a man here who needs help." Amber opened the door to find a tall man with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of the summer sky. His dark hair was partially hidden beneath a dust-covered hat, and he supported a younger man who was clearly in pain. "My friend's been shot," Owen said, his deep voice carrying a note of urgency. "Doctor's out of town. Someone said you might help." Amber hesitated, surprised by the request. "Bring him in," she finally said, stepping aside. "Put him on the table." The wounded man groaned as Owen laid him on Amber's wooden table. Blood soaked through his shirt from a wound in his shoulder. "What happened?" Amber asked, already gathering clean cloths and her medicines. "Cattle rustlers," Owen explained, removing his hat. "We were bringing a herd in when they ambushed us. Doc Barnes is away in Denver. Shopkeeper's wife said you know about healing." "She said that." Amber couldn't hide her surprise as she cut away the wounded man's shirt. Owen nodded, his expression serious. "Said you saved her sister's baby last winter when no one else could." Amber worked quickly, cleaning the wound with a mixture of water and whiskey. "The bullet went through clean. He's lucky." She glanced up at Owen. "I need to make a poultice. Can you keep pressure on this?" As Owen pressed down on the wound with a clean cloth, Amber crushed dried yarrow, golden seal, and calendula with a mortar and pestle, mixing them with hot water to form a paste. She added a drop of lavender oil to help with the pain. "This will help stop the bleeding and prevent festering," she explained, applying the mixture to both sides of the wound before bandaging it tightly. "Will he live?" Owen asked, studying her work with interest rather than suspicion. "If fever doesn't set in, yes." Amber wiped her bloodied hands on her apron. "He needs to rest here tonight. I'll make him a tea for the pain." Owen watched as she worked, his gaze following her movements with curiosity. "You know your business, Miss Patterson." "Most people call me witch, not healer," Amber said quietly, stirring honey into a cup of willow bark tea. I'm not most people, Owen replied with a slight smile, and I call things as I see them. The wounded man, who Owen introduced as Caleb, spent the night on a pallet near the fire. Owen insisted on staying too, sleeping in a chair by the door. Amber stayed awake, checking Caleb's fever and changing his poultice twice during the night. When morning came, Caleb's fever had broken, and he was able to take some broth. Owen stepped outside with Amber as she hung fresh linens to dry. I can't thank you enough, he said, leaning against the porch post. Caleb's like a brother to me. Amber shielded her eyes from the morning sun. Anyone would have done the same. No, Owen said firmly. They wouldn't. Most would have turned us away. The folks in town, they're afraid of what they don't understand. And you're not, Amber challenged. Owen smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. My grandmother was Irish. She knew every herb and remedy from the old country. Used to tell me that healing was a gift, not witchcraft. For the first time in years, Amber felt understood. Your friend should rest today. Tomorrow, if he's stronger, you can move him to more comfortable quarters in town. Much obliged, Owen said, placing his hat back on his head. I need to let our boss know what happened. I'll be back before sundown. True to his word, Owen returned that evening with provisions and news from the cattle drive. He'd explained the situation to the trail boss, who had given him a few days to see Caleb recovered enough to travel. Over the next 3 days, Amber watched Caleb gain strength while Owen made himself useful around her small homestead. He repaired her leaking roof, chopped a substantial pile of firewood, and even helped gather herbs, listening attentively as she explained their properties. This is yarrow, she said, showing him the feathery leaves and white flower clusters. It stops bleeding and fights infection. Like what you used on Caleb, Owen asked, his fingers brushing against hers as he took the plant to examine it. Amber felt a strange flutter in her chest at his touch. Yes, my mother taught me that yarrow was used on battlefields for centuries. Soldiers called it soldier's woundwort. Your mother taught you well. Owen carefully placed the yarrow in her basket. My grandmother would have liked you. On the 4th day, Caleb was well enough to move to the boarding house in town. Owen insisted on paying Amber, pressing silver coins into her palm despite her protests. It's honest pay for honest work, he said firmly, and I won't hear otherwise. After settling Caleb at the boarding house, Owen returned to Amber's cabin that evening. She found herself oddly pleased to see him standing at her door, hat in hand. I thought you'd be heading back to the herd, she said, inviting him in. Boss gave me a few more days, Owen explained, ducking his head to enter. Thought I might help you gather more of those herbs. Seems like useful knowledge for a man who spends most of his time far from doctors. Amber couldn't help but smile. Most cowboys aren't interested in learning about plants. Like I said, I'm not most people. Owen's eyes held hers, and I pay attention to things worth knowing. The following morning, they rode out together on her mare and Owen's sturdy gelding. Amber led them to a meadow nestled between rolling hills, where wildflowers carpeted the ground and medicinal plants grew in abundance. This is beautiful, Owen said, dismounting and helping Amber down from her horse. His hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary. They spent the day gathering plants, echinacea for fighting illness, St. John's wort for wounds, wild mint for stomach troubles. Owen proved a quick study, soon identifying plants before she could point them out. You have a good eye, Amber commented as they sat beneath a cottonwood tree, sharing a simple lunch of bread, cheese, and apples. Had to develop one, Owen replied, stretching his long legs before him. Tracking cattle, reading weather signs, spotting trouble before it spots you, all part of staying alive out here. How long have you been a cowboy? Amber asked, curious about this man who treated her with respect rather than suspicion. Since I was 16. Been with the Diamond D Ranch for 3 years now. He took a bite of apple. Before that, drifted through Texas, Arizona territory, followed the work where it took me. No family? Amber asked, then immediately regretted her boldness. Owen didn't seem to mind. Parents died when I was young. Grandmother raised me until I was 14, then she passed too. He glanced at her. Sounds like we have that in common. Yes, Amber said softly. It's hard being alone. It is, Owen agreed. Though right now I'm not feeling particularly alone. His words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Amber felt her cheeks grow warm as she busied herself repacking their lunch. As they rode back to her cabin in the golden light of late afternoon, Amber found herself wishing the day wouldn't end. Owen's company had been a welcome change from her solitary existence. Thank you for today, she said as they approached her home. It's been nice having someone to talk to. Owen dismounted and helped her down. The pleasure was mine, Miss Patterson. Amber, she said impulsively. Please call me Amber. Amber, he repeated, as if testing how her name felt on his tongue. Then you must call me Owen. Their eyes met, and for a moment Amber thought he might kiss her. Instead, he cleared his throat and stepped back. I should check on Caleb. Would it be presumptuous to ask if I might call on you tomorrow? Not presumptuous at all, Amber replied, her heart beating faster. I would like that. Owen tipped his hat. Until tomorrow, then. As he rode away, Amber stood watching until he disappeared around the bend. Something new was blooming inside her, something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. The next morning, Amber was kneading dough for bread when she heard raised voices outside. Wiping her hands on her apron, she opened her door to find Mrs. Miller and 2 other women from town standing in her yard. There she is, Mrs. Miller said, pointing an accusing finger. The witch who's ensnared that cowboy with her potions. Amber stepped onto her porch, keeping her voice calm. I don't know what you're talking about, Mrs. Miller. I haven't ensnared anyone. We saw you riding out with him yesterday, Mrs. Turner, the blacksmith's wife, added. And now he's telling everyone in town about your healing gifts, as if decent Christian medicine from Dr. Barnes isn't good enough. That man you healed should be dead from that wound, Mrs. Miller continued. No natural medicine works that fast. It's witchcraft, plain and simple. Amber felt a familiar mixture of anger and despair rising within her. Caleb is recovering because the bullet passed clean through, and Yarrow has been used to treat wounds since before any of us were born. There's nothing unnatural about it. You should leave this town, Mrs. Turner said coldly, before something happens to make you leave. The threat hung in the air as the women turned and marched away, their skirts stirring up dust. Amber went back inside, her hands shaking as she returned to her bread dough, kneading it with unnecessary force as tears threatened to spill. She was still working when a knock came at her door an hour later. Amber opened it cautiously, relieved to see Owen's familiar face. His smile faded as he took in her expression. What's wrong? Amber shook her head, unwilling to burden him with her troubles. Nothing important. Would you like to come in? The bread's almost ready for the oven. Owen stepped inside but didn't let the matter drop. Something's upset you. Please tell me. His genuine concern broke through her resolve. Amber explained about the women's visit while she put the bread in the oven. They've always been suspicious of me, she concluded, but now they think I've bewitched you somehow. Owen's expression darkened. That's ridiculous and unkind. It's the way of things, Amber said with resigned acceptance. People fear what they don't understand, and they don't want to understand what they already fear. It isn't right, Owen insisted. Your knowledge has saved lives, including Caleb's, and yours, Amber asked with a small smile. Have I bewitched you, Owen O'Malley? Something shifted in his blue eyes. If you have, it wasn't with potions or herbs. He stepped closer, and this time there was no hesitation. His hand gently cupped her cheek, and when she didn't pull away, he leaned down and kissed her softly. His lips were warm against hers, the kiss tentative at first, then deepening as she responded. When they broke apart, Amber felt breathless. Owen kept his hand on her face, his thumb gently caressing her cheek. I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you tending to Caleb, he admitted. You were so focused, so capable, beautiful in your determination. Amber had never been called beautiful before. Pretty, perhaps, but usually with a dismissive tone that suggested her looks were the least interesting thing about her. The way Owen said it made her believe it. I'm leaving in a few days, Owen said, his expression troubled. The herd needs to reach Wyoming before the first snow. The reminder of his imminent departure stung, but Amber had long ago learned not to expect permanence. I understand. You have your work. But I'll come back, Owen said firmly. If you'll have me. Before Amber could respond, someone pounded on her door. Owen moved protectively in front of her as she opened it. Sheriff Taylor stood on her porch, his expression grim. Miss Patterson, there's trouble in town. The Miller boy is sick, some kind of fit. His mother's claiming you poisoned him. Amber gasped. That's absurd. I haven't given anything to that family in weeks, just a cough remedy for Mr. Miller. Nevertheless, I need you to come to town and sort this out, the sheriff said, his hand resting meaningfully on his gun belt. Owen stepped forward. I'll come with her. The sheriff eyed him suspiciously. This ain't your concern, Cowboy. It is now, Owen replied firmly. The three rode to town in tense silence. A crowd had gathered outside the Miller's home, their murmurs growing as they spotted Amber. There she is, someone shouted. The witch who poisoned Tommy Miller. I've done no such thing, Amber called back, dismounting from her horse. Mrs. Miller emerged from her house, her face streaked with tears. My boy is in there having fits. Ever since he drank from the same cup as his father. Let me see him, Amber said, moving toward the house despite the hostile crowd. So you can finish him off, Mrs. Miller shrieked. I won't let you near him, Mrs. Miller, Owen interjected, his voice steady and reasonable. If Amber, Miss Patterson, poisoned your son, why would she come to help him now? Wouldn't she stay away? This logic gave Mrs. Miller pause. The doctor was still away and her son's condition was worsening. Fine, she relented. But if he dies, it's on your head too, Cowboy. Inside the Miller home, 10-year-old Tommy lay on his bed, his body occasionally seizing with spasms. His face was flushed, his pupils dilated. How long has he been like this? Amber asked, examining the boy. Since midday, Mr. Miller replied, looking more worried than accusatory. Started with stomach pains, then the fits began. Amber noticed a half-eaten sandwich on a plate nearby. What did he eat today? Same as always, Mrs. Miller said. Bread, cheese, some ham from breakfast. May I see your pantry? Amber asked. In the kitchen, Amber examined the family's food stores. Almost immediately, she spotted the issue, a cluster of small white mushrooms mixed in with the dried morels the family had gathered. These, she said, holding them up. These are destroying angels. They look similar to edible mushrooms but are deadly poisonous. Did Tommy help collect these? Mr. Miller nodded slowly. We went gathering last week. He was proud to find so many. He's not poisoned with witchcraft, Amber explained. He's suffering from mushroom poisoning. I need milk, thistle, and activated charcoal immediately. Do you have any liquor in the house? Mrs. Miller, now looking uncertain rather than accusatory, produced a bottle of whiskey. Amber sent Owen to her cabin for the herbs she needed while she mixed a remedy with what was available. By the time Owen returned with her medicine bag, half the town had gathered outside. Amber worked quickly, preparing a tincture of milk thistle and mixing activated charcoal with water. "This will help draw out the poison," she explained as she coaxed Tommy to drink the unpleasant mixture. "He needs to take this every hour and plenty of water in between." Through the night, Amber stayed with Tommy, administering her remedies and monitoring his condition. By dawn, the boy's fits had subsided and his fever was breaking. Mrs. Miller, who had watched the entire process with increasing shame, finally spoke. "I was wrong about you." Amber, exhausted from the night's vigil, merely nodded. "We all were," Mr. Miller added, his voice heavy with remorse. "You saved our boy when we accused you of harming him." Word spread quickly through La Junta. The witch who had been shunned was now being viewed in a different light, at least by some. By midday, several townsfolk had stopped by the Miller home to witness Tommy's recovery for themselves. Owen had stayed through it all, fetching water, preparing food, and keeping the curious at bay when Amber needed quiet to work. When Tommy finally fell into a natural sleep, Owen insisted Amber rest too. "You've been awake for over a day," he said, guiding her to a chair. "I'll watch the boy. You sleep." Too tired to argue, Amber dozed fitfully for a few hours. When she awoke, she found Owen sitting by Tommy's bed, telling the improving boy stories of cattle drives and life on the open range. "He's better," Owen said when he noticed her watching. "Kept down some broth and asked for more stories." Tommy smiled weakly. "Mr. O'Malley said when I'm better he'd show me how to throw a lasso." "Did he now?" Amber asked, checking the boy's pulse. "Well, you're certainly on the mend, so perhaps he'll get that chance." Outside the Miller home, Amber was surprised to find several townspeople waiting with requests for remedies: a balm for arthritis, something for a teething baby, a tonic for fatigue. The near tragedy had transformed her from witch to healer in their eyes. As they walked back to her cabin that evening, Owen took her hand in his. "You've won them over," he observed. "For now," Amber replied, realistic about the fickleness of public opinion. "Until the next time someone needs someone to blame." "Maybe it'll be different this time," Owen suggested. "They saw what you can do, what you know." At her cabin, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the Colorado sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Owen's arm encircled her shoulders, and Amber allowed herself to lean against him, savoring his warmth and strength. "I meant what I said," Owen murmured against her hair. "I will come back." Amber turned to face him. "The trail drives take you through here regularly." "Twice a year," Owen confirmed, "spring and fall, but I was thinking of something more permanent." Amber's heart quickened. "What do you mean?" "I've been saving," Owen explained. "Nearly have enough for a small spread of my own. Was thinking about land in these parts." "You'd stay in Colorado?" Amber asked, hardly daring to hope. Owen's hands found hers. "I would, if I had reason enough to stay." "And would I be reason enough?" Amber asked boldly, surprising herself with her directness. Owen's smile was answer enough, but his words confirmed it. "You would be reason enough for a lifetime of staying, Amber Patterson." He kissed her then, a kiss filled with promise and longing. When they separated, Amber knew with certainty that whatever came next, she was no longer alone. The next morning, a commotion in town drew them from breakfast. Sheriff Taylor rode up to Amber's cabin, his expression urgent. "Train derailed 2 miles east," he announced. "Lots of injured coming in." "Doc still not back. We need you, Miss Patterson." Amber gathered her supplies quickly while Owen saddled their horses. They rode hard into town, where chaos had erupted. Injured passengers were being brought in wagons to the saloon, which had been hastily converted into a treatment area. For the next 12 hours, Amber worked tirelessly, treating everything from minor cuts to broken bones to severe burns. Owen stayed by her side, following her instructions precisely as they moved from patient to patient. "Willow bark tea for the pain," Amber directed as they tended to a man with a broken leg. "And we need to set this before it swells further." Owen held the man steady while Amber manipulated the bone back into place, the patient biting down on a leather strap to keep from screaming. Throughout it all, Owen's steady presence gave her strength. By nightfall, the worst cases had been stabilized. 23 passengers and crew had been injured, but remarkably, none had died. The town, which had once shunned Amber, now looked to her with gratitude and respect. Mayor Williams himself approached her as she finally sat down to rest. "Miss Patterson, I don't know how to thank you. You've saved many lives today." "I only did what needed doing," Amber replied, too tired for elaboration. "Nevertheless, this town owes you a debt." The mayor cleared his throat. "And I believe we owe you an apology as well. Your knowledge isn't witchcraft, it's a blessing to this community." Amber accepted his words with a nod, too exhausted to dwell on the irony. Owen brought her a cup of coffee and insisted she eat something. "You need to keep up your strength," he said, his concern evident. "You've been on your feet since dawn." As they sat together in a quiet corner of the saloon, Caleb approached them, his arm still in a sling but healing well. "Boss says we're moving out tomorrow," he told Owen. "Herd can't wait any longer if we want to make Wyoming before the weather turns." Owen's face fell as he looked at Amber. She felt the same disappointment, knowing their time together was being cut short. "I understand," she said softly. "You have responsibilities." Later that night, after they had returned to her cabin, Owen paced the small room. "I don't want to leave you," he admitted. "Not when we've just found each other." "You have to go," Amber said practically, though her heart ached at the thought. "The herd needs you." "Come with me," Owen suggested suddenly. "Just to Wyoming, see if you like it there." Amber was tempted more than tempted but shook her head. "I can't, not now. You saw what happened today. The town needs me too." Owen stopped pacing and took her hands in his. "Then I'll come back. As soon as we deliver the herd, I'll come back. And next time I won't leave." "How can you be sure?" Amber asked. Owen reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple silver ring with a small turquoise stone. "Because I'm asking you to marry me, Amber Patterson." "I was going to wait, do this properly, but life's too uncertain for waiting." Amber stared at the ring, then at Owen's earnest face. "We barely know each other," she whispered. "I know enough," Owen replied firmly. "I know you're kind and brave and smart. I know you heal instead of harm. I know I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you." Tears filled Amber's eyes. "And I know you're honest and good and you see me, really see me when no one else does." "Is that a yes?" Owen asked, his voice hopeful. "It's a yes," Amber confirmed. "But I can't leave La Junta yet." "Not until they have another healer." Owen slid the ring onto her finger. "Then I'll come back for Christmas, and if you still can't leave, I'll stay. I'll find work here until spring." "What about your dream of your own land?" Amber asked. "Dreams change," Owen said simply. "Or rather, they grow to include more important things." They were married the next morning before Owen had to leave with the herd. Sheriff Taylor served as witness, and the preacher, who had once eyed Amber with suspicion, now beamed as he pronounced them husband and wife. "I'll be back before the first snow," Owen promised as he prepared to ride out. "That gives me less than 3 months to get to Wyoming and back." "I'll be waiting," Amber replied, standing on tiptoe to kiss him once more. "Be safe." As Owen rode away with Caleb and the rest of the Diamond D Cowboys, Amber felt a curious mixture of sadness and joy. For the first time, She had someone to look forward to. The weeks that followed brought dramatic changes to Amber's life in La Junta. The town that had once shunned her now sought her help regularly. Mayor Williams even offered her the use of a small building on Main Street as an official apothecary. "The town needs your services," he explained, "and it seems only right we provide you with a proper place to offer them." Amber accepted gratefully, dividing her time between her cabin and the new shop in town. Mrs. Miller, of all people, offered to help her organize her herbs and remedies. "It's the least I can do," the woman said, shame still evident in her voice, "after how we treated you. And how you saved Tommy despite it all." As autumn painted the cottonwoods gold and the first chill crept into the air, Amber found herself constantly watching the western trail for signs of riders. Owen had promised to return before the first snow, and she held him to that promise each night as she fell asleep alone in their bed. November brought bitter winds and the threat of early snow. Amber kept busy with her apothecary, treating the usual winter ailments of coughs and chills. But as Thanksgiving approached with no word from Owen, worry began to gnaw at her. Trains are delayed all over because of early blizzards in Wyoming, Sheriff Taylor informed her when she asked if there had been any news. "Likely the cattle drives are held up too." Amber nodded, trying to appear unconcerned. "Of course, I'm sure that's it." A week later, the first snowflakes began to fall on La Junta. Amber stood at the window of her apothecary, watching the snow with a heavy heart. Had Owen forgotten his promise? Had something happened to him on the trail? She was closing up shop when she heard the commotion horses coming into town at a steady pace despite the worsening weather. Amber stepped outside, shielding her eyes against the swirling snow. Through the whiteness, she saw a familiar figure dismounting from a weary horse. He was thinner than when he'd left, his face wind-burned and his clothes travel-worn, but his smile when he spotted her was as bright as summer sunshine. "Owen!" Amber cried, running toward him without regard for the snow or the watching townsfolk. He caught her in his arms, lifting her off her feet in an embrace that spoke of months of longing. "I promised before the first snow," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "though it was a near thing." That night, reunited in their small cabin, Owen told her of the difficult drive to Wyoming, of early blizzards and cattle lost to wolves, of the desperate race back to Colorado before winter closed the passes completely. "I thought of you every day," he said, his hand caressing her face as they lay together in their bed. "Every single day." "And I thought of you," Amber replied, resting her head on his chest. "The whole town has changed since you left. They don't call me witch anymore." "What do they call you?" Owen asked. Amber smiled. "Mrs. O'Malley mostly." Owen laughed, the sound rich and warm in the quiet cabin. "And what will they call us in the spring when we start our own ranch?" "Is that still the plan?" Amber asked. "It is," Owen confirmed. "I found good land just 20 miles from here. Enough pasture for a small herd to start with a creek running through it. I put down money to hold it." Amber raised herself on one elbow to look at him. "You did that, without seeing it first." "The former owner described it well enough," Owen said with a smile. "And the location is perfect, close enough to town for you to continue your healing work, but far enough away to be our own place." "Our own place," Amber repeated, savoring the words. "It sounds wonderful." As winter settled over La Junta, Amber and Owen settled into married life. He found work at the livery stable while she continued her apothecary practice. In the evenings, they planned their future ranch, sketching out the house they would build, discussing the cattle they would raise. By February, Amber had news of her own to share. "Owen," she said one night as they sat before the fire, "I think we'll need to add a nursery to those house plans." Owen stared at her, his expression shifting from confusion to wonder. "You mean?" Amber nodded, her hand moving to her still flat stomach. "In late summer, we'll be 3 instead of 2. Owen whooped with joy, lifting her from her chair and spinning her around the small cabin. "A baby, our baby." His enthusiasm was infectious, and Amber laughed despite her lingering morning sickness. "Yes, our baby, who will hopefully appreciate a steadier motion than being spun around." Owen set her down gently, his hand still on her waist. "I'll be more careful," he promised, his expression suddenly serious. "With both of you." Spring came early that year, the snow melting to reveal tender green shoots pushing through the earth. As soon as the ground was dry enough, Owen began work on their new ranch. Amber continued her practice in town while helping with the building whenever she could. The house took shape quickly, a sturdy 2-story structure with plenty of windows to catch the mountain light. Owen insisted on a large kitchen with ample space for Amber's herbs and remedies, and the promised nursery upstairs next to the main bedroom. "It's beautiful," Amber said as they stood together watching the roof being raised. Her pregnancy was showing now, her dresses let out to accommodate her growing belly. "Just wait until it's finished," Owen replied, his arm around her shoulders. "A proper home for a proper family." By July, they were able to move into the ranch house, though some finishing work remained. Owen had acquired a small herd of cattle and several horses, the beginnings of what he hoped would someday be a prosperous operation. Amber set up her herb garden close to the house and hung drying racks in the spacious kitchen. She still rode into La Junta twice a week to maintain her apothecary practice, though she had begun training a young woman named Sarah to assist her. "You'll need to manage on your own for a while once the baby comes," Amber explained as she showed Sarah how to prepare a tincture of echinacea. "Are you confident you can handle it?" "Thanks to your teaching, yes," Sarah replied with a smile. "Though everyone will be eager for you to return, no one makes pain remedies like yours." The baby, a boy they named Thomas James O'Malley, arrived in late August, with the help of a midwife from town and Owen pacing anxiously outside the bedroom door. When finally allowed in, Owen approached the bed with reverence, gazing down at his son with awe. "He's perfect," he whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand with one finger. "Absolutely perfect." Amber, exhausted but radiant, watched the love bloom on her husband's face. "He has your eyes, I think." Owen sat carefully on the edge of the bed, gathering his family close. "And your healing hands, I hope. The world needs more healers and fewer accusers." As Thomas grew, so did the O'Malley ranch. Owen proved to have a good head for cattle and a talent for breeding strong horses. Amber's reputation as a healer spread beyond La Junta to neighboring communities, and people often made the journey to their ranch seeking her remedies. By Thomas's second birthday, the ranch was prospering, and Amber was expecting their second child. The town that had once called her witch now pointed to her with pride when visitors passed through. "That's Mrs. O'Malley," they would say. "Best healer in 3 counties. Saved half the town during that train accident years back." On a warm spring evening, as Amber sat on the porch watching Owen play with Thomas in the yard, she reflected on how much had changed in 5 short years. From a lonely woman shunned by her community to a respected healer with a loving family and thriving ranch, the transformation seemed almost magical. "What are you thinking about so seriously?" Owen asked, joining her on the porch swing with Thomas asleep against his shoulder. "About how quickly life can change," Amber replied, her hand resting on her rounded belly where their daughter kicked vigorously. "5 years ago I was alone and afraid. Now look at us." Owen took her free hand in his, squeezing it gently. "The best kind of magic," he said with a smile. "The kind that comes from love and healing and second chances." "The town called me a witch," Amber mused, "but you called me a healer." "And I was right," Owen said, leaning over to kiss her softly. "As I've been right about many things, especially about marrying you." As the sun set behind the Colorado mountains, casting their ranch in golden light, Amber knew she had found something precious, a place where she belonged, a family who loved her, and a community that had finally learned to see beyond fear to the healing heart within. In the years that followed, the O'Malley Ranch became known not just for its fine cattle and horses, but as a place of healing and learning. Amber trained several apprentices in her medicinal knowledge, ensuring her skills would be passed on to future generations. Owen expanded their herd and built a reputation for fair dealing and quality stock. Thomas grew into a strong boy with his father's love for ranching and his mother's gentle touch with animals. Their daughter, Emma Rose, born that summer, inherited Amber's knowledge of plants and Owen's determination. Two more children followed, Michael in 1881 and Grace in 1883, completing their family. La Junta prospered as well, growing from a small frontier town to a bustling community with a proper school, church, and even a small hospital where Amber sometimes assisted the new doctor, teaching him the value of traditional remedies alongside modern medicine. The witch and the cowboy, as they sometimes jokingly called themselves, had created something beautiful together, a legacy of healing, love, and understanding that would endure long after the old prejudices of the frontier had faded into history. And on quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the ranch work was done, Owen and Amber would sit together on their porch, watching the stars appear over the land they loved, grateful for that fateful day when a wounded man and his loyal friend had knocked on the door of a lonely cabin at the edge of town.